Hey guys, welcome back to Andy's Dinosaur Reviews, and today we have an opportunity to take a look at another of the brand new Roar Attack figures from Mattel. This, as you can see, is the Allosaurus, and this is one that seems to have gone through a little bit of a transformation from the prototype to the final product as far as the actual coloration goes, but I will say that it does actually look really quite nice here in hand as far as, initial thoughts and seeing it, but I think that the repaint that's coming out from the Mattel line for this specific figure is going to be a little nicer than what we have with this one. But that being said, the coloration here does look nice and natural, and I mean, for the most part, and it looks really cool. Like, it has an overall very flashy looking design for the paint scheme for the figure, and I think it looks nice overall as far as what they've come up with for this figure, and Mattel is still somehow managing to keep the paint schemes of their figures, for the most part, again, fairly fresh, and this is a pretty good example of that. The only thing that I can say straight away I'm not a big fan of is the really bright white arms. I don't understand why they did that. I get, it's supposed to kind of be like this whitish coloration coming down, running into the arms, but it just doesn't look that great. I would have preferred to have, like the dark green body of the dinosaur as the arms, and then maybe some of the white littered down onto it. But then again, I think that might just be asking too much of Mattel, because then they would have to add a little extra paint application out onto the arms, and they don't do that kind of stuff. But as far as what we have here with this Allosaurus, again, we have pretty much your standard as far as the box art goes. Again, the Dino Escape box art. And then here on the back, we have a look, kind of a sneak peek at the Roar Attack action feature, as well as an image down here showing the two other figures in the line, one of which is the upcoming Baryonyx, which I will have a review up immediately, and then, of course, the Oranosaurus, which we have already reviewed here on the channel. So let's pop this out of its box and take a look at it. So here is our newest version of the Allosaurus from Mattel for the Jurassic World line, and it's definitely not the best Allosaurus from Mattel so far. I could say that with complete certainty, and I really don't like the fact that we don't have any paint application, which is not unheard of for Mattel. It's pretty common. But from like this point out, I feel like it just really needs some, and due to the fact that there's really nothing other than that dark green, it looks very awkward. It just doesn't look as good as it should or could, but the first half of the dinosaur looks okay, again, if we get past the white arms, but for the most part, it looks all right as far as, what we have here paint-wise. The sculpt is obviously not as great as it could be when it comes to the tail length and just generally like the overall mass of the tail. It's very, very scrawny. Looks, even scrawnier than usual, potentially, and obviously too short, which the Mattel figures are always too short as far as their tail lengths go, but the overall body mass just looks super off on the tail of this one. Like, if you look at the Allosaurus, look at how big and intimidating looking it is, and then we get out here to the very puny tail. It almost kind of reminds me of Carnosaur, if you've ever seen that film, and the Tyrannosaurus in that film, and how big and gigantic the dinosaur is, and then you get to his tail, it's just so scrawny. Has a kind of a similar feel to that. But anyway, again, it still looks alright, I guess, so let's go ahead and jump straight to a closer look right now. So starting up here at the head sculpt of our Allosaurus, you can see that as far as the overall appearance goes, it has a very Battle at Big Rock style Allosaurus head sculpt, which I do really quite like. I love that film, and I also love the appearance of the Allosaurus from that film, and I feel like they've done a pretty good job of kind of replicating it, obviously not with the paint scheme, but as far as the actual sculpt goes. And we do have some really nice texturing to the face throughout, some beautiful scale detail, as well as some really nice vibrant scale detail here for the lower jaw. You can see that we do have the nostrils sculpted out, of course, and the eyes are really quite nicely detailed and painted with a red, but of course we have the dark green as the pupil as opposed to a black like Mattel was kind of starting to transition into, and now it seems as though they've completely backtracked back to just adding in the primary body color as the eye coloration as far as the pupil goes, so maybe Mattel's not listening to us, who knows. As far as the coloration here on the face, you could see that we primarily have a very dark green with kind of like, and actually I was stating at first it was a white, but it looks more like a light gray that just kind of runs and splotches through the face all over the place, which does look really quite cool. The light and dark coloration playing off of each other makes for a really nice visual, so they have done a good job as far as making that head area stand out, and of course the neck as well, but you can see that there's actually some of that red up here on the top. You can see the red starts to kind of splotch around back here close to where the ear would be, but you can see it's also, up here on the crest a little bit and just kind of splotching around the center of the head right here where the ridges start to pick up, which does really, add a little element of flashiness up there, but also just makes it a little bit more appealing just because we have that little extra amount of paint application up here on the head, which is never a bad thing. You can also see some of the red right here as well. If we open the mouth, you can see, of course, that the teeth are all actually sculpted quite nicely, unlike the most recent Monolophosaurus, and you can see that they are painted really quite nicely with a variation of like a yellow bordering on an off-white, and the inside of the mouth also sports a really nice kind of purplish coloration. Look at that tongue. Actually, let's get a nice shot of that tongue if I can get the light to hit it nicely. There we go. You can see how absolutely awesomely textured that tongue is. It looks really, really nice. Beautiful tongue sculpt on the inside of the mouth right here, and again, it does seem to all sport a pretty decent looking gloss coat. Not quite as glossy as we usually see on Mattel figures, but it is in there, and it's nice to see the paintwork up here on the top of the inside of the mouth as well. If we run back here into the neck, you start to see those ridges picking up, and they get really quite large here on the back of the neck before kind of tapering off to a bit of a smaller size. And then we start to see a good healthy mixture of like this red, the kind of light gray, and the green, and it's just like all over the place. Like there is no specific design to it at all. It's just kind of splotched everywhere, which does look kind of cool from a visual standpoint, but at the same time it almost looks a little bit more like a mess of paint as opposed to an actual paint design. But it still, again, does look pretty decent, but it almost kind of washes the detail away because there's just so much going on paint-wise that it's a little hard to pick up on how nice the detailing in the neck actually is. Until you get here to the underside, you start to see kind of like some of the creasing, some of the wrinkling and stuff in the neck region. You can also see this kind of light green that we have for the lower jaw does run down into the throat and then hits the chest area before completely tapering off, and then it is non-existent, which I don't think I even need to tell you guys. It would have looked nicer to run the entire course of the underside, but again, we cannot expect that, especially with this figure, because it seems like they almost absolutely hated the idea of giving any paint application past like the mid area of the dinosaur, because there's just nothing from this point out. But you can see again that we have more of that light gray. The red kind of tapers off here at the base of the neck, but we have more of that light gray that runs out here through the course of the body. And then we have that really ugly open area up here for the top as far as the roar attack action feature goes, which I'm still not happy about, but I'm kind of at the point where I'm almost used to it now. But you can see again that we have more of those ridges up there. As we move down here into the body, you can pick up on the rib cage quite nicely here in the stomach region, as well as a lot of really nice scale detail. And then we move down into the arms of the Allosaurus, which are extraordinarily muscular, and again have that kind of light gray coloration, which the transition to that just doesn't look smooth at all. Like it just looks like he has like sleeves on or something, and it looks a little weird because we should have had like some green come down and then maybe transition a little smoother into the light gray if that's what they wanted to do, but instead it's just a completely abrupt transition to the gray coloration, and I just feel like it could have looked nicer if the application of the paint was a little bit more natural. But you can see that the arm sculpt and everything does look quite nice. You have some really nice scoots down the course of the fingers and some very large nails. No nail paint at all, as they are just the same coloration as the rest of the arm. As we move back here into the body, you can see some nice creasing and stuff right here where the leg is kind of pushing into the stomach region. Beautiful muscle definition in the thigh, as well as some fantastic scale detail. And one thing that's really cool about this Allosaurus, and it kind of is like a throwback to the Battle at Big Rock film, is the fact that you see kind of like scars and wounds all over the place. Like you can see them here in the tail, you can see them here in the thigh, in the stomach region and stuff. So there's like a lot of injuries that are pretty apparent throughout the course of this Allosaurus, and that is something that we see associated with the Allosaurus from Battle at Big Rock. And although this isn't exactly that Allosaurus, it has that same appearance to it, so it kind of, has that same type of a look as far as the injuries go. But you can see some nice creasing here in the knee and kind of get an idea of the kneecap right there. Calf muscles quite nicely elaborated, and again the scale detail is super nice looking, like really, really vibrant on the figure. As we move down into the foot sculpt is beautifully done with some really nice scoots down the course of the toes, and we don't have yet again any nail paint for the claws on the feet, but we do have a bit of a gloss coat added, so it kind of looks like there is nail paint, which is something that Mattel does tend to do quite often. We do also have a dew claw
That one also actually does seem to sport a bit of a glossy look, which is pretty cool because oftentimes the Dewclaw gets completely ignored, but this Allosaurus does seem to have a little bit of a gloss coat on that Dewclaw. And then as we move back up here into the top of the dinosaur, you start to see a little area where those ridges kind of pick back up. Again, looking very similar to the Papo Allosaurus as far as the formation of the ridges here, and then they taper back off until they completely disappear as we move out into the tail. Again, we have some pretty nice looking scale detail throughout. Overall, the sculpt is really quite vibrant, but again, the tail is just so massively small compared to the way it should be on an Allosaurus, and you can see that there is a pretty nice looking curve to it, so there's almost like a little bit of an elegant feel to the dinosaur, but the tail is just so ridiculously thin and just like it just completely lacks any type of mass to the tail at all. And of course the length is off, but that's something that comes, with every Mattel figure. But I just really feel like the fact that the tail is just so small just looks awkward on the figure. But aside from that, again, the Allosaurus does look pretty cool. The sculpt is fantastic if you look past the tail. Of course, we have extraordinarily large feet, but that's, again, just a given with Mattel due to the balancing issues. And I will say that I am warming up to the paint scheme that we have for this. Aside from the arms, I still think it looks really quite nice. And again, the lighter and darker tones playing off of each other looks really cool. And we have a really nicely placed and painted eye on this side, which is definitely a plus. But being an articulated figure, you're not really going to see too much different on this side compared to what we had seen on the opposite side. I guess aside from like the scars and stuff, we can see that there are different scars on this side compared to what we had seen on the previous side, which is definitely cool to see, especially out here onto the tail. You can see quite a few different scars and stuff, or wounds, however you would like to describe those. But again, the leg here on this side is trailing, the opposing leg is leading, so there is a little bit of an area here where we could see more of the stomach region in comparison to the previous side, which shows you just how nice the detailing standpoint is in the stomach region as well. But overall, again, the dinosaur isn't in any type of a crazy position. The head's kind of straightforward. The only real big difference then on this side would be how the tail appears due to the curve in the tail. The underside also does sport some pretty nice looking detail, and we do have the Jurassic Facts code if you would like to add this to your collection. But definitely a pretty fun Allosaurus, not my favorite, and I feel like the repaint that's coming out for the Mattel line will be nicer than this one, but again, a pretty nice looking Allosaurus regardless. As far as the articulation for our Allosaurus goes, we do have lower and upper jaw articulation, and that's due to the action feature, the roar attack feature of the Allosaurus. Someday I hope that Mattel will make like an Allosaurus with like some really cool like swivel action in the neck, similar to what they have on some of their smaller figures, like the Savage Strike, like Velociraptor Blue, the Savage Strike Velociraptor Blue, and the way you can swivel the neck. I really love that, and I would love to see some of these larger theropods get that, action feature as well. Maybe if we ever get an Amber Collection one, who knows. But you also have arm articulation right here. Boy, his elbow's really pointy. I didn't notice that before. But we have articulation as far as moving the arms out away from the body and forward and back. And then leg articulation, again, forward and back, as well as out away from the body, just not super far, but they do move. And then we have tail articulation as well, which can swivel or move up, down, left, right, all of those usual posability options for your Allosaurus. And then we have the action feature. And I will say that I have warmed up to this as well, because I'm actually kind of happy that they're just releasing a few different species with this, and I hope that they do come up with another action feature at some point that won't give us this kind of gaping hole in the back. But at the same time, I'm kind of enjoying having the option of a few different dinosaurs in this line so that you can pose the dinosaur and display it with the mouth open in any size or width that you would like, because that's not something we were able to do before, and I have been enjoying that actually. So if we go ahead and operate this, straight away, those are some pretty nice sounding Allosaurus noises, but this is what I'm talking about. Like, I like to be able to have my dinosaur here with the mouth open, and it stays this way. I don't have to wedge any type of like little plastic or anything up there to try to keep the mouth open to create a really cool scene. And that is one thing that is a pretty big plus about these style figures, specifically the roar attacks, and how we can operate this button to keep the mouth open. It's obnoxious having this big gaping hole up here, but it's also pretty fun to be able to display your dinosaurs with the mouth open, or even, slightly open like we have here.
So still pretty fun, but the only downside really about this is when you actually move this to try to kind of make the Allosaurus snap its jaws. You can see that the noises go per click so that they're kind of like all over the place if you try to articulate the dinosaur too quickly, which, is a little weird and obnoxious, but it overall is still something, again, that's kind of growing on me as we go. As far as a size goes for a length on our Allosaurus, you are looking at about the 12 3/4 inch range, or about the 32.5 centimeter area. And then for a height, in the position that it's in currently, when I knock it over because I was too close to the backdrop right there, you are looking at just shy of 4 3/4 inches, or around the 12 centimeter mark. For a size comparison, there is Mr. Papo T-Rex, the Attack Pack Allosaurus, and Robert Muldoon from the Mattel Jurassic World toy line in comparison to our Allosaurus, and you can see that it's pretty much the exact same size as all of the figures in the Roar Attack size range. It falls right in the exact same size range as all of the others. So if you happen to already have one Allosaurus from Mattel, you're already going to know about the size of this Allosaurus. So this brand new Mattel Jurassic World Camp Cretaceous Dino Escape Roar Attack Allosaurus is a pretty fun figure. It went from being one that I was really excited about to one that it's like, it's alright. It's a fun addition to my collection, but it's not anything to go crazy over in my opinion. But initially it had a slightly different looking color scheme, and then they altered it somewhere down the line, so it looks a little different compared to the prototype. I personally preferred the prototype compared to this one, but that's not saying that this figure looks bad by any means. It does still look pretty fun. The only really big downsides for the figure, in my opinion, are the fact that there's just no paint halfway through to the tail end of the dinosaur, like we just gave up on paint application altogether. And Mattel does, do that quite often, but I don't think it's ever been quite as, weird looking as it is on this one, and I'm not too sure why. I think the fact that the arms are like that brighter light gray, and then the legs are the darker green, just makes the two it looks weird now because of that, and I don't know exactly what it is. I can't quite put my finger on it, but I feel like any type of paint application out onto the tail or even down into the legs would have made the figure just look a little bit nicer, and it wouldn't be such an eyesore as far as the second half of the figure goes. I also don't like the fact that the arms are, strictly that light gray color, and there's no kind of like a gradual or more natural transition to those colors, but it's also not the end of the world. The tail, of course, being so short and thin and just not at all the size that it should be, is a little bit of an obnoxious aspect of the figure, but again, we're so far into the Mattel line, it's been this way since the start. I would like to think at this point we're kind of used to that. It would always be great to get larger tails, more proportionate tails, but it's, again, something that we're kind of, I would say, numb to at this point. Regardless, the sculpt is fantastic, really capturing the overall beauty of the Battle at Big Rock style Allosaurus, the adult version, as well as a pretty fun-looking paint scheme, which for the first half of the dinosaur does look pretty nice. The coloration, again, plays off of each other really nicely when it comes to the darker colors and the lighter colors, and the way that they appear on the figure visually. It's a nice feast for the eyes, I would say. Even though it's not my favorite version of an Allosaurus, it is still a pretty flashy looking version and definitely has a nice natural look overall. And we have the Roar Attack action feature, which, is kind of like 50-50. I kind of like it, kind of hate it. I don't like the big gaping hole in the back, but I do like the opportunity of displaying my dinosaurs with the mouth at any, distance open that I like. I do appreciate that fact as far as these figures go. And I do like the noises that the Allosaurus makes when it's actually operated as far as the action feature goes. So, this figure's kind of like a 50-50 for me. I definitely do like it, but I don't like it quite as much as I was expecting to. But regardless, if you are interested in picking this up, I will include a link in the description to where I purchased mine on Amazon. I don't know for sure if it is actually still in stock, but if it's not, hopefully it will come back into stock sometime soon. So make sure you check that link. Make sure you pick this up if you do in fact find it, and also make sure you like, comment, and subscribe, and I will see you in the next review. Thanks for watching.